Hey everyone, I'm stepping away for 2 weeks, so for this week and next, I'll be re-airing 2 wonderful episodes with dietitian Heather Fiore that first aired back in September. Heather shares her thoughts on having a healthier relationship with food and listening to your body. I'll be back with new content in 2 weeks, but for now, enjoy Heather and her wonderful insights. Are you feeling stuck? Is something holding you back? Are there obstacles in your way? Well, let's smash through those obstacles so that you can live your best life. Hi, I'm Matt Brooks, founder of Matt Brooks Coaching, and I'm fascinated with how people overcome barriers and achieve success. Join me for insights, strategies, and inspiring stories as we explore practical tips and powerful tools to unlock your full potential. This is the Barrier Busting Podcast. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm Matt Brooks, and I'm happy to have you here listening. And for those of you who are new to the show, welcome. We are talking about habits for several weeks now. And the good news is today you don't have to listen to me talk nonstop about it. I've got my first guest. I'm very excited. But let me just recap quickly what we've done in the last 3 shows. So the first show, we talked about how the brain automates habits, how the basal ganglia remembers your behaviors and automates habits through what we call the habit loop, which is a 4-step process. If you recall, there's a cue or a trigger of some kind, and that triggers a craving, which is the second step. The craving triggers a routine to find the 4th step, which is the reward. That was discussed in my first show. My second show, we talked about how to build good habits and build new habits. And then last week, we discussed bad habits, which no one wants to hear about, but we've all got them. And we discussed why they're so hard to break. And we got some interesting information about how to break them. Today, we're going to look at habits from a different perspective, from the perspective of food. Yes, I know nobody wants to hear this, but don't worry. I promise you're not going to hear about kale today. You might hear a little bit, but no one's going to force kale upon you today. In fact, I have a dietitian on the show today who I had on another show at one point, and when I asked her about sugar and what she thinks about sugar, she said, well, sugar's delicious. So you're not going to get lectured to today. I'm very excited to welcome Heather Fiore, who is a registered dietitian in private practice in Lawrence, Kansas, although she is licensed to work with people from several states. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Her practice is called Free State Nutrition. She holds a degree in nutritional science from Cornell and a degree in health education from SUNY Brockport. She works with people of all ages, but has had a career that has placed an emphasis on children and adolescents and those who struggle with diabetes. You can find more about her and her practice at www.freestatenutrition.com. More fascinating to me, however, above all of it, is the fact that she and her family own a pet bearded dragon. There's not something you hear every day. So, Heather, good morning, welcome, and thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to see you again. It's been a while. Before we get into the topic of habits, I want to hear a bit more about you, okay? First, you've been a dietitian for a long time, over 2 decades, and you went to school for it, which means you somehow caught the bug for this early on. So tell us, how did you catch the bug? What got you into this in the first place?
Well, it was a couple of very personal factors. My grandmother was interested in nutrition, not educated, just generally wasn't really an educated person, but she just had sort of a sense about, nutrition and, would say things like, maybe watch the butter on your bread and, things like that, where she just just sort of made us aware a little bit about what we were eating, not just like eat a big plate of pasta and the bread to sop up the gravy, as she called it. Because we are Italian, so there was plenty of pasta, but she just had this sense of maybe balance makes more sense.
Which is interesting because
we're doing it.
My grandmother, you grew up in Jersey, And my grandmother was Portuguese. When she immigrated to the country, she was kind of pushed into a neighborhood with Italians, right? So my grandmother was all about eat, eat, eat. Whenever we'd go over to visit her, she would just pummel us with food. And your grandmother was pretty much saying, be careful, which is interesting.
Right. Like recognized that we love with food and we celebrate with food and we mourn with food. Food is involved in all these things, but she just had the sense of like, let's maybe be a little bit sensible about it too. And then I had my own sort of struggles with body image and all that kind of thing that actually turned me away from studying nutrition because I thought maybe this is like going to be too much. I have all these issues personally, and then I'm going to be studying, and maybe I should go in a different direction. But I found my way back to nutrition, and it ended up helping me, of course, through my own personal issues, which made me really want to help others deal with their food issues in a similar way. And so that's kind of been my guide.
It's not uncommon when I talk to people in helping professions that what drew them there in the first place was something that happened in their own lives. This is a pretty common thing. It's why I'm in life coaching. I studied to be a therapist, but I opted to become a life coach because, I had my own shit, right, that happened in my life that was tough to deal with. And when that happens, you're searching for answers and you're searching for help. And so it's not uncommon to hear that. And I think it's important we can't emphasize it enough because when you see someone in a helping profession who has been through things themselves, you're not just getting information that came from a book in college, you're getting real life experience. And there's something very potent about that. Now, would you say that going into this profession really helped you become a whole person? Do you feel this is really the niche for you? I get the sense yes. And can you talk just briefly about how that has enhanced your life?
Absolutely. And I have to say, you mentioned I have been in practice for over 2 decades, and this entire time, I wasn't totally focused on all of this. I had lots of jobs and I did this and I did that. And I didn't always have the autonomy to practice in a way that I wanted. But especially since getting into my private practice about 7 years ago, I really came into myself as a professional and realized, sort of remembered, oh, right, this is where I did this in the first place, helping people with their relationship with food and like getting people out of this cycle that they're in of all the guilt and shame and all that stuff. It is just the honor of my life to do it. It is such a joy for me to witness. And it's incredible. And I'm not prone to hyperbole, but it's so life-changing for people that like I can't deny that. Like it is truly like an amazing thing that people experience. And I love being a part of it.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, that's the reason I bring it up is because I'm a life coach and I talk to people who feel stuck and want to get somewhere. And so it's great to talk to people who found that center in their lives. I want to ask you, after working as a dietitian in a number of different settings, you decided in 2017 to open up your own practice, which takes tremendous courage, by the way, to do something like that. Tell us about the experience of opening your practice and how, well, you already said how it's made a difference in your life, but what do you do with your clients to help them find the sweet spot of fulfillment? I know you're not about guilt and shame when it comes to food. So, what is that experience of opening up your practice? It's very scary. It takes a lot of courage. And then how did that get you to a point where you are working with people to find their sweet spot?
Absolutely. So I have to admit, I sort of stumbled into it. We moved here to Kansas from Rochester, New York, and I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I just sort of had an opportunity. Somebody kind of mentioned it, like a doctor's office. Oh, we'd love to have somebody to refer to. And I was kind of like, oh, all right, I guess that could be me. I guess I could try that. And I've worked outpatient and thought it would be similar. So, just kind of hung my shingle up. I got myself a little flip phone, and that was my business line and some business cards. And I was basically ready to go. Completely clueless about what this process looked like, what it's like to work with people in this setting. and how it differs from outpatient, like in a doctor's clinic type of thing. But I had the fortune of getting connected with a business coach, which was life-changing for me because he saved me like months and months of time figuring stuff out on my own. Like I was charging very little. It was not going to be sustainable. So he helped me figure out a reasonable price to charge and then a way to package my services. And, even just the intensity of working with folks, in an outpatient, you see somebody every 3 months. And even then, sometimes people are like, oh, the dietitian again, And
Yeah.
here it's like, I'm working with people every week or two. And like 3 weeks feels like way too long. I'm like, oh my gosh, how have you been? I haven't seen you in so long. And so it's like a very different mentality of, the intensity of the work and the amount you're able to get done with folks because you're seeing them so often. And, and I get an hour and nobody's knocking on the door saying, your next client's waiting and all that stuff. It is just, it just really gives us the time and the space to work on what we need to work on. And, I don't know, it just helps people really like explore the root of things. I'm not just here, talking about the food pyramid, although to be fair, I am a child of the 90s. I do talk about the pyramid still because I think it's important. But, it's mostly about what are the reasons that you do things, not just, hey, you should do this, but like, yeah, why are you doing it like that? Like, let's look at these things and explore how you might change, back to your theme. Like, why is it like this? And, what would it be like to change to this or to try this? And, kind of just go slowly with it.
Well, two thoughts came from that. First, I was a child of the 70s. So for my generation, if you get sick, you have saltines and ginger ale, right? That's how you, and paregoric. They used to give us paregoric. Oh my God, was that horrible. And, but the other thing is for those out there that are, more prone to work with a life coach, that I love about this story is this advice that you can see in a lot of places. Just do it. If you're not fully ready, so what? Just do it. You'll learn it as you go. You can plan and plan and plan, but action is what makes things happen. So you just jumped in, you dove in, and then you learned it as you went, which is the kind of advice I give people. So that's spectacular. I saw on your website that you are licensed to work with people from several states. I can't remember them all now, but it was like Texas. Tell us all the states you're licensed to work in, and do you do telehealth? Is that what you do with the people from there?
Correct. Yes, I do telehealth. Gosh, can I name all the states? So I officially have a license in Kansas and Missouri. New York has a certification. I have that. And then Texas, I just got that license. And then there are a few other states that don't require a license of any kind. So they are on my list as well, like New Jersey. They've got like a licensing law on the books for the past 4 years, and it's actually not in place yet. So in the meantime, it's still, I can see people there. I believe it's Colorado, California, Virginia.
And so you meet them over Zoom or something like that?
Over Zoom.
Okay.
Yes. And I had that in place all along, but, COVID lockdown really, required all of us to sort of jump into Zoom full time and realize like, gosh, I could be seeing people from anywhere, it's a very similar service. Like,
Right.
Yeah, sitting in the same room together is nice, but honestly, Zoom is like, pretty much the same.
Yeah, same with me. I can see people from Europe if they want to click on. But I wanted to make sure to bring that up because you're terrific, and I want people to work with you, and not think that I don't live in Kansas, so I can't work with Heather. No, you can work with her if you're from a lot of places. Let's get into the topic at hand. Since we're talking about habits, that's been the series that I've been doing. Let's start real quick with what are some of the things you see in your practice as a result of lifelong bad habits? What should we know? Are there things that might be less than obvious to us lay people who don't think about diet and dietitian related issues in our regular day?
Sure. I think so many things, but, one of the things that I realized people are doing very maybe subconsciously in some way is, a lot of people are focused on trying to lose weight. And so there's this sense of trying to eat less, like always, even when they're not also not doing it, they're
Right.
still in their mind thinking, I'm supposed to eat less.
Right.
That is like drilled into our heads.
Which, by the
And
way,
so,
often backfires, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
so, people start their day and they think, well, the longer I go without food, the less I'll end up eating, right? Is
Yeah.
the thinking. So wake up in the morning, not feeling all that hungry, skip breakfast, cool, have some coffee, skip lunch maybe, or grab a little something or other. And so that's kind of the sort of the habit people get into is like, oh, I don't eat breakfast. I'm not hungry for breakfast. All the things. I've heard all the things about why people aren't eating in the morning. And it does become a habit because your body is just like, well, I guess this is what we're doing. So it doesn't send hunger signals, and you just feel like, oh yeah, I'm like one of those people. I don't eat breakfast.
Yeah, I might be guilty of that. I think I told you that. That might have been me. You drink coffee until 2 p.m, then you're stupidly hungry and you grab whatever you want, right? You see that often?
Yes. See it all the time. And it not only, affects like what dinner looks like, especially if you're the person that's supposed to go home and cook and you're starving, you're probably going to pick up the drive-through on the way home, because who wants to run home and start cooking when you're starved? And then usually if you're up late enough, a couple hours later, you're hungry again because you missed out on eating all day. And so now you're snacking at night.
I know nothing
you're
about
doing
this.
The thinking is like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but you're doing it because you're like legitimately hungry.
Yeah.
You might eat too much food because of, again, the thoughts you have about it. And then that affects that morning, right? Now you ate, you went to bed, and of course you're not hungry.
Right.
So it all starts again.
Right. And just tell me about, real quick, and I've got to break for a quick minute, but when it comes to the topic of habits with food, it occurs to me that so many of our habits that center around food were sort of put in place in our childhoods. Is that right? I mean, wouldn't you agree with that? And how do you break those? Because habits like that are hard to break.
Most definitely. And I do try to explain to people, like, you have to start with some grace for yourself, right? Like, you've been doing it this way maybe for decades, and you were sort of trained to do this for whatever reason. Maybe your parents, taught you to clear your plate, or, made you try things or eat things that you didn't want to eat, or just had these rules about food that you picked up on and you were like, okay, this is how we do things. And so, I'm not a therapist. I'm not trying to like delve into their childhood and address that, but just like recognize that explains a lot about why you do things now.
Yeah.
So like, why not think about taking a different approach, try something new and different. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but let's see how it feels, like, let's just approach things with curiosity, see how it feels. If it's really terrible, don't do it, but let's try it.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that you started this whole thing with give yourself some grace. That's a phrase I use a lot to people who are beating themselves up for things they learned in their lives that have caused them real problems. And okay, start from a perspective of giving yourself grace. That is a great place for us to stop for a second, just for a quick break. We're going to be right back, and we are going to talk junk food.
Feeling overwhelmed? Struggling to find balance in your daily life? At Matt Brooks Coaching, we get it, and we can help. With over 25 years of nonprofit executive experience and an MSW with a clinical focus, Matt Brooks offers personalized coaching designed to help you rise above your challenges and live your best life. Whether you aim to advance your career, enhance your skills, or simply find more clarity and peace, Matt is here to be your partner and ally. Visit mattbrookscoaching.com to book your free discovery session today. Take the first step towards a brighter tomorrow.
Yeah, sorry for the shameless plug, but I have to do that. And don't I have a great voiceover artist? Don't I?
I love it.
Yeah, she does a great
so
job.
much.
Somebody might know, I believe, right?
I might.
So let's get back to why do we develop these bad habits around food? And talk about the mindset. And in particular, I'm interested in the concept of junk food because I was reading in one of the books on habits that I've been researching, a discussion about how our ancient ancestors, when they were foraging for food, were looking for calorie-dense foods, but those were not as common to find. It was hard to find foods that were calorie-dense, which means sugar, salt, fat. And so today, our world is rich with these foods, these calorie-dense foods, but we still crave them because those patterns are embedded in the base of our minds that worry about where our next meals come from, even though we have, McDonald's everywhere and food everywhere. That's a powerful force to fight. So let's talk about that and talk about mindset. How do we fight, thousands and thousands of years of primitive instincts?
Yes. There's a couple things there. One, I will say, is just this, this idea of, this is calorie dense, and so we're prone to crave that. And on one hand, it's true, but on the other hand, that habit I was just describing is part of how we end up there. When we're in this place of restriction, whether it's intentional or not, you're much more prone to go for those foods. You show up at home having barely eaten all day, and there's a bag of chips there. You're going to eat the bag of chips because
damn
you're
right.
hungry, and it's it's delicious, it's quick, and it's going to provide some calories. It's checking all the boxes, and they make it so that they're not very filling, and then they're just like they've got the flavor pattern that just makes you want to keep going. And so if you're hungry, you're not really going to get full, so you're just going to keep going. So you're kind of sick.
It's super stimuli, right?
Yes.
And so you're going to want to keep. I mean, yeah, I know. Do not put a bag of potato chips or Tootsie Rolls in my house. It's not going to last the day. I'm going to kill it in a day, and I know it's shameful, but that's the problem.
Well, and there's the piece where you're showing up and you're starving, so that's setting you up to do it. The other piece there is the mentality that you have around chips, where you're thinking like, these aren't good for me. I shouldn't eat chips. And so just that thought of showing up to eating, I shouldn't eat this. Once you eat one chip, you might as well eat the whole bag because you've already done the thing you just told yourself not to do. So what's the difference between one chip and 10 chips and, a bag of chips?
And so I was talking about in one of my podcasts, sorry to interrupt, but about this habit loop in terms of you see the donut, you crave sugar, you eat the donut, you get the sugar high. But it could be that the craving and the reward come from a deeper place, a place of defiance, which you're sort of inferring right there. Like you see the donut, you hear in your head all the people that tell you, do not eat the donut, it's bad for you, don't eat the donut. You say, screw that, I'm going to do what I want. You eat the donut, and you get that feeling of you won, that feeling of defiance, and aren't I awesome because I defied the rules, right? That's a big problem with food, isn't it?
100%. But it's quickly followed by some shame of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I wish I hadn't eaten that donut. And next time you see a donut, you're like, I'm the person that eats the donut, I'm the guy that eats the whole bag of chips. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And that brings
you just told yourself who you are.
That's a perfect segue to my next question, which was when you and I were talking about how we talk about food. You said something really interesting to me about how we talk about food somehow shapes who we are with our relationship to food, right? Talk about that a bit.
Yes. I think, we can't just, eat food and think, I'm nourishing my body. We have all these thoughts and feelings about it. Again, like maybe going back to your childhood, maybe your parents didn't allow you to eat cookies, or there was no candy in the house, or whatever it is. And, and so it isn't just a food. It's something you weren't supposed to have, or it's, something, again, you get into this pattern where you feel like, I can't trust myself around this food. And you're reinforcing this message that you're not somebody who can be trusted around food, and that's sort of the story you're telling yourself about, how you act with this food, instead of just like, I don't know, maybe it's just food. Maybe today you only need one piece of candy. Maybe tomorrow you need 3 pieces. Who cares? Like, it doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things. but in your mind, it feels like this very big deal. And that just sort of makes it harder to manage. And it feels like, oh, I just eat all the thing all the time.
So we really need to pay attention to how we talk about food with ourselves, right? And not just, I mean, it's sort of like how, we're always told, listen to our bodies. We need to listen to our words too, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. Right. When we rely too much on our brain and you've got like, oh, don't do this or do this on one side or the other, you're all mixed up in there. But if your body is going to tell you like, yes, I feel like eating a donut, or no, I don't feel like eating a donut today.
Mm-hmm.
But your brain is always like, donut.
I'm going to admit that my body has never told me, no, I don't feel like eating potato chips today. I'm going to admit that. I'm guilty. I'm older now, so I try not to eat things like that very often. But yes, there was a time where my body would say, no, you want those? You need them. Eat as many as you want. And that,
That sounds like your brain, not your stomach.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm sure it was. But let's use this as a segue into another topic that I think is really important, emotional eating, right? And I found an article on CNN by a Madeline Holcomb that was saying that emotional eating isn't always so bad. That was like the title, emotional eating isn't always so bad. And I was fascinated by that because all we hear is shameful things that make us feel guilty and shameful. And this article was saying essentially that, yeah, it can get out of hand, but that food has a place in many areas, not just in terms of nutrition. It's something we do culturally. You referred to that earlier. It's something we do for many, many reasons. And sometimes we use it as a coping mechanism, right? So, what do you think? I sent you that article and you read it. What did you think? Do you think emotional eating is a bad thing? Fill us in from a registered dietitian's perspective.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed with the article and the folks that were quoted in there that, again, it's like approaching yourself with grace. This is something that you do. Is it the only way that you manage a certain feeling? If so, that might be something to look at, right? Maybe you need to talk to somebody about that. Maybe you need to figure out other strategies for managing that emotion or situation. But it can be in your toolbox. Like sometimes food helps. Sometimes you had a tough day, you sit down, you want to relax, and a bowl of chocolate ice cream might be just the thing. And other times it's not. Like it might be the thing you think of eating, but then you eat the thing and you're like, well, I'm actually still feeling whatever way.
Right.
And maybe that wasn't the best choice that day. Maybe something else, maybe taking a walk or talking to somebody or whatever would have been better. But you really just want to consider, is this the thing that I need and want right now? Is this going to be the best way to serve myself? If so, then go right ahead. Eat the thing or do whatever it is you're thinking you're going to do, as long as it's not harming you.
Well, what I liked about the article and what you're saying is that, our bodies and our minds are not separate. Okay, they work in different ways, but they're all part of one whole. And the reason they call it comfort food is because sometimes we need comfort, right? We just do. It's a question about, and again, with the cultural traditions, so much food is centered around celebrations. And, I'm in Jersey now and everything has pasta. Oh my God, I've never seen so much pasta in my life. Everything, and tomatoes. Those are the things that you see all the time. But you see people celebrating around that, like there's special pasta dishes for Christmas and other times of the year. And you see the families enjoying themselves, and that has a positive impact on our overall well-being, right? Even if it's food maybe we shouldn't really eat, it does have a positive impact. So when does it go over the line? When is comfort food eating or junk food eating or emotional eating, when is it a sign that maybe we should get some help?
So, one example would be, food is fine, right? There's nothing that's totally off limits and that if you ate it ever, it's bad. So eating, food in that situation in general is fine. If it turns into a binge situation, meaning it feels out of control, sometimes someone who's binging will describe it as almost like dissociating, like they barely even know they're doing it. If you're in a situation where you are eating a very large volume of food, not just like eating a large portion at dinner or 2 portions or something, but a very large volume in a short amount of time, it barely registers. You just do it before you even realize you've done it, and it feels compulsive. That's a problem. That is something that you probably need some help addressing. That's where we are concerned about. And I don't even know if I describe that as emotional eating, but it could start there, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm glad you said binge eating. You keep leading me into my next things because we are out of time for today, but we are going to have you back. Heather's coming back for next week's show, which is awesome of you. Thank you, Heather. And we're going to talk about binge eating and in depth and overeating and things like that. But that is all today. I want to thank Heather Fiore for joining us. Remember, you can find out more about her at www.freestatenutrition.com. And join us again next week to hear more, because we have many more topics to discuss. For now, thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe or follow button so you'll be notified every time I drop a new show, especially next week's when Heather comes back. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time on the Barrier Busting Podcast.